Hi, guys, and welcome back to my second episode of Liberal Arab. And today I'm joined by a friend of mine who's an entrepreneur in green energy, who's also an advocate for free markets and for liberalism, and who has pretty much a good idea of capitalism and socialism when it comes to it. Multicultural, lived in Jordan, in Thailand, in Pakistan, and here's my friend Nabil, and we're here to talk about our roles as intellectuals and individuals in times of crisis. How has been your outlook on this whole situation?
Well, hi, and thank you for having me. The outlook, as far as I'm concerned, I believe that only dead fish go with the flow. So when everybody else was panicking when COVID happened and the ecosystem went into turmoil and people had a problem, nobody was understanding what to do and how to adjust their business model and their product to deal with a crisis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I work in smart farming, in smart agriculture. So we develop technology to help farmers make better decisions based on actual environmental data. So for
Yeah.
me to get confused, it was hypocritical. I had to stay the course. I had to believe in what I was doing. I had to believe in my product. And I just stuck to that. So to me, I didn't really feel a crisis. And if anything, I kind of benefited because when the large, I guess, when the large organization, when Whole Foods was facing problems,
Mm-hmm.
the little community farmer was being empowered because he was being trusted a little more to be able to provide the clean vegetable, the healthy vegetable, the non-COVID, non-chemical, versus having to go to a large store where you would have to deal with a large supply chain, you would have to deal with large staff and so on. So to us, it was kind of a wake-up call to understand that yes, we need to focus on the traditional ways of doing things and not really, put all our eggs in one basket, which is the large corporation,
Yes.
and that was it. And to yeah, so it was, to
I,
us it
I
was an
feel like
advantage.
the biggest proof for this is having the free market for us, because when the state interferes, the state is really saving big businesses and killing small businesses. The biggest proof we have had recently is oil falling below zero, right? Because there's there was no demand for it, and naturally when there's no demand, the price is going to fall. And this is the perfect example of a free market. And I keep repeating this example because it's very important to see that how even when the government interferes in a certain market, it can only interfere to a certain level before that market crashes, whether it's because of a natural disaster or whether it's because that product is just not valuable anymore. I feel like this thing that happened with the oil going below zero, this crash, gave investors and gave people in the market a better idea of how much we really need to start depending on alternative and cleaner energies. Pollution started going down. I live in Santiago, Chile now, and it's one of the most polluted cities, especially in the winter, because it's surrounded by a mountain and all the air, the dense air gets stuck up there. So you can imagine in the winter, it's horrible. Pollution went down 30%, which is amazing. So I feel like because we've had a free market, because we've had the principle of a free market, given to us on a real life example, we should appreciate it more. States and governments have decided what businesses are essential. They have decided what businesses should close, and they practically imprison people at their own home, making people feel guilty when they want to discuss topics such as economy, right? And
Sure, yeah, I agree on some level, but at the same time, you know, I'm living in Pakistan. I've been in Pakistan for about like 5 years now. Okay, and over here, the if you it's a strange country, it's an interesting country, but it's a strange country. And the people are literally, in their mind is, well, we can't see corona, so it can't really hurt us,
yes,
or the other
but this
side
is a
of it.
problem this is a problem of communication, because when you have, again, when you have a government communicating the seriousness of the issue without really giving uh, concrete data, or saying it's okay, now it's not okay, now it's dangerous, now it's not dangerous, people are not going to take that government seriously.
I absolutely agree. And the best, and that's why there is, as you said, there is alternative markets, there is alternative energy, and there is also alternative sources of information. So I, for one, honestly, and this is, this is not a joke. I'm taking my entire COVID advice and all the knowledge I have about the current situation, what's going on around the world, from Joe Rogan. I'm constantly listening to the Joe Rogan podcast because, and the guy goes through so many opinions and so many, he experiences so many points of view
Yeah.
in within one day, and then he filters all of that, and he kind of, he acts as that filter for me, and I get that
Mm.
information. If I want to depend on my government, at least as far as I'm living in Pakistan right now, so if I want to depend on these people, man, I would, it
Yeah.
would be, a major disaster, because the government has literally converted the situation into a disaster. And now, in order for them to kind of salvage the situation, they're just
Hmm.
going from bad to worse, from bad to worse. So one bad decision is just, kind of, it's a domino effect at the end. So unfortunately, we do have a problem, as I said earlier, in the information dispensary, of not giving the proper information to people, and filtering out so many other. I mean, doctors are speaking out.
Yes.
Doctors are protesting against governments for not providing PPEs, for example,
Yes.
or against governments for not providing the correct information to people on how to act and where to go and how to get tested and so
Exactly.
on.
You know, in
Uh,
Spain, they banned private hospitals from giving out PCR tests, which I found very anti-productive, because I, for once, as a responsible person who has private insurance and who doesn't want to be a burden on the public sector, it is my responsibility to go to the private sector, because
Absolutely.
I don't want to be a burden on a system that's already collapsing. And let's get a little bit into politics. Sorry, into economics. People are calling for better social security, for raising the minimum wage, for better public health care, which in your mind is usually something good, right? But this is the thing: when you resort to collectivism and populism, and then you have individualism, you only see the iceberg, because when it comes to socialism, what you have underneath that is 150 million people who are dead. And when you have individualism, you have people who decided not to go to war and use the free market in order to trade goods and not have to kill each other to provide them with the basics. This is the concept of a market, trading. Um, a lot of people are saying, we want this, we want that, and no one is providing a solution. They think that printing money, even governments are printing more money than they should right now, which is going to cause a hyperinflation. And you have all these, sorry to speak.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, all of this is they're just, it comes back, or it falls back to the same thing as you said earlier, is they want to push us to a place where we say, please tax us more, please charge us more, here is
A
my
more
money,
authoritarian
give
state.
me this vaccine. I mean, I'm one of the people, I'm not really an anti-vaxxer per se, as the
Mm.
title goes, but I would really not trust a vaccine that came out within 6 months of a pandemic. I understand a little bit of science, and I understand the life cycle of a particular vaccine, and it takes a little while to get developed. So if a vaccine is already out there, that means one of two things: one, they were ready for it, or two, they're still in testing phase and it's still not sure. So it's kind of, I would still rather continue isolating myself as I'm doing right now, and keeping
Yeah,
my family and people around me safe until there is a proper tested vaccine that is really, properly tested
dependable.
by somebody else.
Yes.
Because reliability comes from that. I don't know if you watched the if you watched the attempted launch the other day, the
Yeah.
the Dragon and Falcon 9. So the main thing that they kept talking about, and the main thing the engineers and everybody was banking on, is the fact that they repeated the entire drill so many times that now they know exactly what the sound would even be. And if that changes, they would know what it is. So, so these are the kind of things that we need to train people to make the right decisions. And if we don't, then it's just.
Exactly. We're going to move to a more authoritarian state, because what we have right now is when states have the power to choose which businesses are open, which businesses are closed, how much money should be paid to a certain worker, how much is the minimum wage. We're moving to Medicare mercantilism, which is going to give people a more a bigger motive to push their socialist ideologies. So, for example, people say something like COVID never happened. Bullshit, it never happened. Are we going to forget Chernobyl, which was, but the radiation never got to Jordan. The radiation never got to Pakistan. It killed 3 million people directly because of radiation. And then they say, no, this isn't socialism. What is socialism? How can you trust numbers coming out from a government that has suppressed free press for the past 60 years?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's my whole point. That's exactly what I said. I would not trust somebody right now with a vaccine. I would not trust them with the numbers, because two things. One, I don't know if they're putting out low numbers to maintain a steady economy and foreign exchange, or two, are they putting out larger numbers to benefit from World Bank and certain financial stimulus that's out there? So so again, we're confused as people. I know for a fact that over this weekend, which was the Eid holidays in Pakistan, they opened all the markets, and people did not really need to shop because, well, they opened the markets because people need to eat because they're poor and they will die of starvation if they don't. So they opened all the markets and people just went out in drones, like millions and millions of people went out. And now what we're doing is we're testing 3,000 people per day, and we're getting an average of 2,500 positive cases per day.
Yeah.
Now, whose fault is that over here? And now who's going to, are these numbers right? Are these numbers again just so that we could get scared and not go out again in those numbers, in that way, the way we went out last weekend? Are these numbers inflated because we need, as Pakistan is a developing country and it's a poor country, so we need the stimulus from World Bank? So is it just a ruse to kind of get the World Bank to pay? It's so many things, and and again, we're unable to highlight the opportunities that are available to people right now during this period, which is, okay, it's a crisis, but in every tribe, dating back to prehistory, there was always the hunters and the gatherers, the healers and the population, and
Exactly.
so we have these tasks, we have these roles. So why don't we assign the right roles and let these people take the right decisions and empower them to do the right thing for right now?
Exactly. What I'm
Rather than.
surprised is there are so many few countries that have actually hired specialists in pandemics to be the face of the country, because this is a face that you're going to trust right now to transmit the proper information, because someone who's dedicated his life to studying this is going to have more information than, for example, in Spain, the Minister of Health is an economist and a philosopher. So you can understand where there is a conflict over there. In Chile, for example, yesterday, the Minister of Health went out and said, we were not aware of the poverty that is in the country. So you're not aware of a country that you're supposedly managing. And Chile is a country that is doing really good in terms of free market. There is inequality, but the problem with the inequality is the corruption, is the big businesses that get their support from the state. So LATAM, the Chapter 11 in the United States is basically telling the government, save my ass, right? Because no one really files for Chapter 7, which is liquidation. They file for Chapter 11, which is the protection program. which is basically saying, I don't want to pay my clients. I'm not going to do any refunds. I'm going to need the money from the government. I'm going to need money from the government. I'm going to need the loan. I'm going to. But no one says, I'm going to file for Chapter 7 and sell all my fleet of airplanes, for example.
They wouldn't. They can't. I mean, obviously, I'm going to. I don't know if we can. How much names can we say on this thing? But the one of the Chapter 11s that was filed just last week. I mean, it was a joke.
Yeah,
One of the biggest companies on the planet can just go out and say, "Oh, we're bankrupt." It, obviously, it was there, or it happened because, as you said, they don't want to pay their customers, and they don't want to pay their partners, and they don't want to pay their employees, and so on.
exactly.
Another airline yesterday made an announcement. They're cutting 1,500 foreign jobs while
Mm,
they're keeping the local jobs. So you don't have flights to fly people back to whatever the hell they're coming from. So why
exactly.
are you cutting their jobs? You
Yeah.
know, I mean, we as a startup in Pakistan, when this whole thing blew up in Pakistan, and everybody was like, okay, what do we do and how do we pay our employees
Mm,
and so on. So the government, or like the organizations in charge of this entire system,
yeah.
they try to provide us with low, what do you call it, low interest loans
Mm,
on 5% annual. So I was like, okay, so but what about after the COVID? So I go and I take, let's say, 2
yeah.
million rupees from the bank at 5% markup, and I start paying I'm paying my employees, and I'm still not making business, right? I'm not making any revenue. I
Nothing.
just took a loan. I took an extra loan. I took
Yeah.
extra debt just to be able to service my employees. I didn't do that. I went back to my employees and I was like, listen, you're all due for a raise, because, well, it was that time of the year. And I just sat down with my people, and I'm like, I will let you decide what we're going to do. Are
Yeah.
we going to continue? Are we not going to continue? How do you guys want to do this? And whatever you decide, we'll work it out.
Yeah.
We worked out a very nice model, and it's been working. And we've been working from home for the past 3 months. As I said, we haven't slowed down. If anything, the team is a bit more incentivized, because now they have more ownership of the product and of what's going on and of the
Hmm.
situation. So it's all about how you deal with what you have, and how you take advantage of it. The value of money, we never understood it as people. We You just said a minute ago that everybody started asking for, people are asking for more loans, people are asking the government to increase the social security, people are asking. But unfortunately, I have to. Here is the capitalism coming out. Yeah. Unfortunately, when you start giving people handouts, they will get used to it.
And not only that, for example, let's say that people really want these handouts. What you're going to cause is a hyperinflation. So let's say you give Social Security for $1,000 a month, right? But then the bread price rises to, I don't know, like 2,000 a month. You're
It
still
will.
short.
In this scenario, of course it will, because local transportation is blocked, international transportation is blocked,
Yes.
the store at the end of the street is blocked.
You
So
have a
so
shortage of
basically,
supply.
you have a shortage. That means the price will go up. So you give people $1,000 right now. Next month they're going to cry. They want 1,500.
Yeah.
I give I give
There's,
an example. I give an example. Let me. It's like I keep telling people this. It's like you'll take somebody to McDonald's, and you will
yeah.
buy them a Big Mac. They would ask you for fries, and then you
Mhm.
get them fries, and they would automatically assume that you will get them ketchup with that fries.
Yeah.
And then they will say that, oh, but the meal is dry, I need a Coke. And then you would
Yeah.
get them a Coke. And then after the entire meal is done, they're gonna say, oh, but what about dessert? So you get them a McFlurry. And then
Exactly.
once all of that is done, they're gonna be like, what the fuck you do to me? You gave me an unhealthy meal from McDonald's.
Yeah.
It's like, come on, man.
When the government is forcing casinos to give out free chips and regulators are sitting on the bar having a drink, people are going to make risky bets because they're not betting with their own money. I have a great example. So, and I read this. I think I don't remember when, but I think it was Free Thinkers or something like that. And it said, I had a dream that I woke up with $1 million. And then I went out of my house and my neighbor said that she's been waiting for her supply of medicine that never got there. And I walked down in the street and I see everything is closed. And then I see people on the street walking. And it turns out that I wasn't the only one with $1 million. Everyone woke up with $1 million. But then people realized that money did it within itself doesn't have value. And they realized that if everyone has $1 million, everyone is going to need to work.
I would, you see, it all depends on what your requirement is, right? I mean, you know, people who say that you know, money doesn't buy you happiness have probably never left home, you know. So that's the thing. Once you know the
Money
value
is
of
a
money,
means to happiness because you can
abs-
travel, you can have
it's a tool.
experiences,
It's a
you can
tool,
buy
just like
yourself
any
more
other thing.
time. With money, you can buy yourself more time.
Absolutely. You see, it's like, and then how can you utilize it for, you know, the best amount of time and the best amount of goods and services that would actually lead you to comfort. And comfort in life, I think, is all that we're looking for, you know, right? Just to have
Exactly.
a you know, well, you don't really need that big house. You need a comfortable house,
Yeah,
right? You don't need a massive lawn. You need a small garden. So, you know, it's all about how you and how you position yourself and how you
hmm,
position your needs. And then it's based on that what you go out and you strive. So basically, it's that journey, right? So you have the goal, and then you go and you achieve the goal. Versus people who I have the problem with, and I can continuously criticize, is the fact that they want the Ferrari, but they don't want to work hard enough to get it.
exactly. They,
You know. So, but and they will shit on the person that and who's driving it.
yeah.
It's like, oh, look at that motherfucker, he's driving a Ferrari. But
This
why
is the
did you
thing.
work hard
We
enough?
reached a point in society, and I really think I really think that no one wants to be poor. No one wakes up and says I want to go and look for food. No one wakes up and says I want to be a medicure person. People develop certain habits sometimes that can lead to these actions, and sometimes based on circumstances, on where you're born, on your family status, you can have it better or you can have it worse than other people. But at the end of the day, we're reaching a culture that is saying poor people exist because rich people exist, right? So they say poverty exists because wealth exists, which is wrong because when you have rich people, even the poor people, yes, well, it's true. When you have a freer market, the rich will get richer, but the poor will also get richer because if you look at examples like Singapore, for example, where they have a low poverty rate, and even within their poverty rate, they make much more money than people who are living in other countries. And that's because they have a highly unregulated market. But for example, how would you respond to people who are saying we want to nationalize our country's resources? In my opinion, that's confiscating it.
Nationalize anything is, yes, as you said. I mean, they're nationalizing hospitals in certain countries. So that's, I mean, that. What about the person? What about the group of people that worked so hard to invest that money and probably, you know, get loans and so on, and you know, build this particular, you know, institute, and then you're just, yeah, as you said, confiscating it. It just does. It makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah.
And again, I want to circle back to something you said. It's poverty in certain places is a constraint, and it's, you know, just the way it's kind of, you know, sheer circumstance. But on some level, it's also a choice, right? I know a lot of people that took themselves out
Mm,
from the gutter, and they built themselves, and they're not. I mean, I know one guy. He's in his 40s, right?
yeah.
He's probably 2 years. He's exactly 2 years older than I am, and he literally picked himself up from the gutter, from nothing, from absolutely
Mm,
not be from literally going to sleep
yeah.
hungry 20 years ago to today. He owns flats in very nice you know, in very nice buildings where, you
Neighborhood.
know, he's and you know, he's in real estate. He's building villas, and he's working for a large and he worked
Yeah,
for large organizations only because he decided 20 years ago that this is not going to be his life and the life of his kids. And he got a good
exactly.
education, and he got a good job, and
I,
he made sound
I
investments.
think people
And today,
fight the wrong fight. They fight against the government to provide them with basic necessities, which at some level I can understand and I can comprehend. You don't have the luxury of shopping for a hospital when you have a heart attack, right? Uh, it's reasonable, but at the end of the day, I do think that governments do have resources to provide public services without being a burden on the citizen and on the market, without taxing. You can charge user fees, you can rent land, you can privatize your national resources. All these things can happen without the burden of taxing 60 or 70 or 40%. Let me give you
But
a small example. Once again, Sweden, for example, everyone says, look how amazing Sweden is. Look at the health system. There's no poverty. Of course, there's not. But when you pay 60 or 40 percent income tax, and then you have brain cancer, and you want to wait 8 months or 9 months to be able to get that treatment, and there's an abundance of cases where Canadians and people from Nordic countries that have to leave the country to get treatment outside because their government can't provide them with that treatment. They don't have the resources because it's a nationalized and public sector that
yeah,
not
but
only it
sorry.
also kills the private sector that has these advancements and gives people actually kills your freedom to choose your social security, your health insurance, how you want to do your savings. It's technically the government saying, give me your money and I'm going to manage it for you because we're all on the same level.
I agree with that. I really I like that. I like that idea. I have friends. I have a lot of Swedish friends, and I have a lot of Danish friends, and and they're quite happy. And I think with them, what happens is you're very right that sometimes there is a delay. For example, if you do have a serious
Mm.
condition, you're unable to get a time slot. But I think there is some kind of regulation where they could possibly go to a different country and get treatment, as you said, and the government would still cover a particular
Yeah,
part of that. And I know friends in from Denmark, and they're paying 70% tax.
yeah,
But at the same time, you know, uh, if you've been to the country, it's an absolutely gorgeous place. Versus in the Middle East,
mm,
in Jordan even, or I'm living in Pakistan right now. Pakistan, nobody pays taxes. I think a country of 220 million people, 2% of the country pays tax.
yeah.
So,
But
so
this
when
is
you
a
have
problem because that means 98% of the country is living off of the tax of those two people, of those
they're
2%.
demanding the 98% of people are not just living off of tax of others, they're not just stealing the money and services of others, they're also demanding further services. Oh, you need to fix the road outside my house. Oh, you need to
Yeah.
give me better medical services. Oh, my kids need better school.
Which,
Well, no, first you pay your tax and then we give you all of this because there's a
exactly.
massive
Or you
backlog.
don't pay tax at all, and no one in the country pays tax. And we all contribute as individuals through NGOs, through foundations, because everyone is more wise as to what's going on inside his own house. In order to fix outside your house, you have to fix what's inside your house. And the government cutting
Absolutely.
off of those resources, you're really not giving 100%. You're losing investments, you're losing technology. Donald Trump got the funding for the World Health Organization, right? Uh, Bill Gates stepped
Powerful.
in and is now one of the pioneers and engineers of with the World Health Organization. He basically saved them. Had Bill Gates lived in Denmark or Sweden or Germany, he wouldn't be able to fund the World Health Organization. We are putting an evil face on people because of their success. We want to tax success, which means I want to punish you for being successful.
Mazboot. Yes, exactly. That was my argument. The fact, okay, something you said to me in the morning when you sent me the first message, and you said, "I want to talk to you because you're pro-capitalism." The thing, I want to clear one part. I'm not pro-capitalism. I'm pro-capital,
Mm,
right? So and there's a massive difference, right?
yes.
Uh, Obviously there has to be money behind things for things to move forward. So for people who are preaching revolution right now, people that are talking about, oh, Mark Zuckerberg is the devil because he's asking people to take a pay cut
Yeah.
because they're sitting at home. Well, if you read all that text and if you understand all that text, if it, as you said, if it wasn't for Bill Gates, who, the guy owns Microsoft. It's one of
Yeah.
the largest organizations, the largest companies in the world, right? So the largest proper capital
Yeah.
investment in the world. So it's, how could you say he's the devil when he's actually stepping up and he's taking charge of
The reason you're able to
forget,
tweet that Bill
yeah.
Gates is the devil is because of Bill Gates.
The reason you're supposed to go on social media, the reason you're supposed to go on Facebook
Yeah,
and talk trash about Mark Zuckerberg is Mark Zuckerberg.
exactly.
You can't come
It,
into my house and start talking shit about my food. I'll slap you.
exactly. And
So
it's really funny because when the whole socialism movement came out, when the whole Karl Marx and Engels came out, it came out during the industrial era when there was no airplanes, when there was no electricity, when having slaves was still legal in Europe and the United States. There was no there was so many professions that we have right now that didn't exist in their time. And Karl Marx preached for free education, and people forget that Karl Marx was an advocate of child labor because he wanted the free education, and then for people, these kids, to start working in factories and all this industrial revolution. And what people, I don't know if many people know this, but at the age of 31, Karl Marx retired and was living off of Frederick Engels, right? Which
so
is
you
crazy.
see,
Like I'm 30 and I feel like I still haven't started my career, while you have Karl Marx who was retired at 31.
oh no, well, see, some people are fortunate, right? Some people, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know how old Zuckerberg is, but if he wanted to retire, he could just literally go buy a country or an
Yes.
island or a
Yes.
planet or whatever, up to him. Um, Elon Musk doesn't need to work.
No.
Elon Musk doesn't need anything, but he still wants to sell all his property and rent a house. So it's all about what kind of what's your need? What do you want to
Mm.
do? And how can you translate that
Yeah.
into right now and the future? Because there is so much that has been done, and I mean, for example, I'll turn back to agriculture for a minute, right? So agriculture is a documented industry for the past 11,000 years,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's how much data. Yes, so that's how much data there is of agriculture. Okay, so it dates back all the way 11,000 years. Like literally, how does a plant grow? You can find ancient scripture of that. But people are not willing to read. People are
Mm.
still, I mean, I go out to people and I say, we have an artificial, we've developed artificial intelligence, we've developed technology that can predict the rain. And they'll be like, oh, but God makes the rain. How can you tell me?
Exactly. It's what they do is counterproductive, honestly, and it's just plain stupid.
The
There's a
support
point that
system.
there's a point I wanted to discuss. We come from the generation where we saw the transition of having the cassette and having the pen inside the cassette and rolling it to transitioning to more technological advancements. And I think many millennials right now, I'm like the first of the millennials, that I was born in the 1990s. So I got to see that transition. And our generation right now is the generation that has the access to the most information and knowledge and education for free online. Not everyone has internet, but there are many people who can have access to internet. There are many people who can have access to this free education. In most countries, you have a public library where you can go, where you can educate yourself, even if it's just for half an hour a day. And I feel like people within our generation, because they didn't get to see this transition, don't appreciate how much capitalism, how much liberalism, how much a free market has benefited us as human beings. Then you have people like Britney Spears coming out and saying we should redistribute wealth. Do it. No one is stopping you.
Yalla,
Exactly. Go
I want
redistribute
some.
your wealth.
I
Why
want
are
some.
you waiting for a government to tell you how you should redistribute your wealth?
Yeah.
Why are you waiting for them to enforce you to give out your money? Why aren't you on the news like Bill Gates?
That's the thing. We are, as you said, we have access to so much information. So we've become the dumbest smart people to ever exist,
Yes.
unfortunately. I mean, you're 31, so I'm exactly 10 years older than you, right? So how I remember things is when we had an exam or when we had to go, my early days in school,
Mm.
we had absolutely no way of using a calculator. We had to use
No.
a proper piece of
Yeah.
paper and a pen. When we wanted
And you
to
needed to
prep
show
whatever,
your work and everything.
of course, yes. And when we had to prepare a report, we had to go to the library, and in order for us to remember,
Oops.
and in order for us to get that information, we had to retain it because if they ask me tomorrow, I need to know this, and so I have to memorize it. Versus today,
Exactly.
all I have to do is just know the word AI and not know what it does. Because anytime somebody will ask me about it, I've got the 6-inch screen in my hand. I could, just literally Google AI. I don't even have to type it anymore. I could just say, "Hey Google, what's AI?" And Google will just start telling me what AI is. So I don't even need to learn how to read. It's a very strange time that we're living in. That with so much information that we have around us right now, whether it was COVID, whether it was the
Mhm.
economy, whether it was clean energy, whether it was food, whether it was, I mean, look at how people are, the world is split in half.
Yeah.
One part of the world that knows the power of cannabis, and that is really harnessing that power, and kind of, and trying to break away from the conventional. And the
Mm.
other part that is saying no, it's illegal, and if you have any of it, or if you smell of it, or if we'll do this and that to you. So it's like, come on, man, you're punishing
Even
me for messing with a plant.
this is something that I wanted to discuss as well, which is drug legalization. I'm one of the people who the right hate and who the left hate, because when it comes to economics, I'm against populism and I'm against the collectivism
Yeah.
culture. And when it comes to the right, I'm not a conservative. I think I appreciate freedom, and I think you cannot have economic freedom without civil and social freedom. Even Friedman argued that. And I think even within liberals and capitalists, they can argue within each other who's more Friedman, who's more Hayek, who's more this, who's more that. But at the end of the day, it's our duty to transmit the ideology of liberalism and freedom and free market, because people vote, and democracy is a thing. And lately, it scares me to see how much people are willing to give up for of their freedom for their security, right? Which moves
Yes.
to an authoritarian state. So even within liberalist people, we are arguing who's more conservative, who's more Friedman, who's more this, who's more that, when in reality, we need to come together and spread the free market. Back to the thing about legalizing drugs. Many people are against it because of addiction, because of many of its negative effects, when reality is uh, addiction exists even when it comes to legal drugs, even when it comes to alcohol, cigarettes,
Food.
heroin, whatever
Food.
you want. Addiction exists in all its forms. When you legalize drugs, the thing is, someone who in their right mind is not going to say, I woke up and today I'm going to go get heroin, right? Some people might. I'm not saying those people won't exist. But at the end of the day, you're ending a much bigger war that's killing much more lives. And I sit here and I question myself, when you're in quarantine and when you're on lockdown and when all the airports around you are closed, what are the drug traffickers doing? Because they're still doing business. They're still crossing borders. They're still trafficking their drugs. They're still using boats. They're even using more dangerous methods. So you didn't really kill the drugs on war by building a wall or by closing your airport or or by using any of those methods, right? What you're doing is just you're putting more people's lives in danger because you have people that have this black market. When you legalize drugs, you're practically ending that market because it's a market where everyone is free to participate without repercussions of going to jail, without repercussions of dying because of a drug war. You have prostitution, which needs to be legalized to end the human trafficking. Um, there
If you
are,
want to talk about, if you want to, if it's like, if you look at the early days of when uh, I think when Colorado, in the early days when they legalized, their economy, the state economy got better, the state crime
mm,
rate went down, Canadians, I think the average age of smoker, of marijuana smoker in Canada has gone up, and the average and the frequency of use of marijuana in I think in Canada has gone down.
Exactly,
A
because
great example,
you
a
have
great
less
example is
people selling to
Portugal.
young people.
Yes, and then you have a great example in Portugal where all sorts of drugs are legal. So you could
Yes, they're
actually
not they're,
get
they're not
away,
really legal. They're decriminalized. Uh,
decriminalize. Yes, yes,
it's not
yes.
it's not a market, but I can see the point in that because they have lower rates of addiction. They have
Yeah,
yes,
it's as simple as you said. So everything is addictive. The
yeah,
speed, people in cars that are driving really fast are much more dangerous than a heroin addict.
yes,
People, people with gambling addiction also have people. So addiction is adrenaline is
yeah,
addictive. So you have chemicals inside your body that So how can you? It's it's very subjective. You can't just say, oh, we're not going to legalize drugs because it's addictive. Well,
yeah.
marijuana has zero. I think marijuana is very low in addiction rates. I'm pretty
Mhm.
sure it's not 0%, but it's
No,
not
but the
100%.
psychological addiction always exists.
But it doesn't kill you.
No, it doesn't kill you, and I can understand they say drugs are dangerous. People can overdose. But people do overdose on legal medicine. People
Yeah,
do die
all the
because of
time.
alcohol. People do die because of smoking. People do die because of caffeine. People do die because of sugar. I can go on and on and on, and the list goes on. So this goes back to my point of when the government decided which business is essential and which business is not. How do you define what is essential? I've seen governments that have opened barber shops and closed gyms.
Yes, yes. Here
You're
in
telling
Pakistan,
me
they did the
that
same.
getting a haircut, that your vanity is more important than you working out?
No, absolutely not. I agree with the part of only essential businesses open, but there has to be a proper definition of what is essential.
Mm,
A barber shop may not be essential, but a fruit shop could be essential.
yes.
Vegetable markets need to open up. So certain businesses need to open up, and certain restaurants, I don't think restaurants need to open up. There's absolutely no need for it, right?
Yeah.
You can cook at home. If you can't cook at home, order delivery. Just don't, you don't need to go out and eat there.
Yeah.
Uh, Maybe
This
not
is the thing.
opening barber shops.
It's social responsibility more than
Absolutely.
statal responsibility because you're mature enough to make the decision of whether you want to go and eat in a restaurant or not. I shouldn't enforce the restaurant to close its doors just because me as a government says that this business is not essential because it starts with the restaurant, but then where is it going to stop?
No, I can, again, it also very subjective because uh, certain people don't really respect the boundaries, right?
Mm,
So Pakistan, I'll go back to Pakistan. If they open the restaurants in Pakistan right now for people to go and dine in, restaurants will be full.
yeah.
Nobody will follow the operating procedures. Nobody will care about social distancing. It will
But
it will
then
just
this would be the
collapse.
restaurants, wouldn't this as well be the restaurant's role in admitting people in or not? So it's not just because me as a restaurant has the right to say this is my private property. I can only allow 10 people in, for example.
I agree with you. Yes, that is in a very nice part of the world where life is much more civilized, I would say.
Mm,
In Pakistan, if you go up to somebody and you say, if it's a nice restaurant, for example, one of those fancy restaurants, and somebody comes, let's say, in his Land Cruiser, Mercedes, whatever, parks in front of it,
yeah,
the waiter tells him, sorry, sir, we're at capacity, you cannot enter. Dude, that waiter will never be seen again in his life.
yeah. Or never work again, which is what happens in Jordan as well with the culture of do you know who I am, or do you know who my father is, or do you know who my
Exactly.
uncle is?
Exactly. So how can you, so the
Yeah.
best thing for the
But
government in
again,
order to
again, I
not,
blame again also for this culture. I know the solutions that I propose aren't something that is going to work tomorrow. It's a progress that needs to be reached, and there's a level of consciousness that needs to be reached. But I also blame the government for this corruption of do you know who I am? Because in order for you to go through something legally, you have to go through the government. So if the government is being there like your referee, and you give it, for example, a wink, or that you're going to bribe it later, then it's going to play in your favor, right? While in a free, unregulated market, the government doesn't have the power to interfere and say, okay, he's my son, but what can I do? I don't give out
Yeah.
licenses. I don't tell him how to run his business. I'm not a regulator. I am just someone who protects your life, your freedom, and your private property. And this is all that I do.
But wait, but if you say you don't want the government to regulate, then who's setting the value of,
The people, the
let's say,
invisible hand.
this is now again, you're creating chaos, because even if we revert back to, let's say, for example, the barter system, where we remove the money from the decentralized system, then what is a dozen what are a dozen apples worth? What is a chicken worth? What is a you know
Mm.
what is a yard of cotton worth to make a shirt? So again, so this is, so to me, maybe because I'm really really hungry, so an orange may be worth much more to somebody that's just having it as an ingredient in their fruit salad. So over here, there is chaos, and there is
But
there, there is
this
much
would
bigger.
lead to individuals negotiating with each other, which is what we're missing right now. When
But
governments,
I think that's where we went wrong the first time, when our negotiations went so violent that we started fighting over it, right? Isn't
exactly,
that
but
how the problem started?
this is because we didn't have the concept of a market or economy, which we went back to something that I said earlier, was that capitalism recognizes that we need a market to trade products so that we don't kill each other for our products. So
Yes,
this is what I'm
exactly.
saying. That when people have the right to negotiate with each other, then the results most of the time is going to be better, because when the best way to deconstruct an economy is to go at it step by step. So when you look at countries like Hong Kong or Singapore, and you decipher, decipher their economies, you would see that where there's more liberalism, there's more wealth, and where they lack is where they have a more populist view on the economy, for example, or on society. So I think this is the best way to decipher something, is to go and do the macro and the micro studies of it, and to see really the small little details of how it is. Some governments, for example, they decided to freeze loans. Other governments decided to freeze rent. They never gave the option for these two individuals to sit down and reach an agreement that could be perhaps more, that could give you more benefits on the long term. So for example, me as an individual, I should have the right to sit with my landlord and say, look, this happened, we entered a crisis, why don't we renegotiate the terms of our contract and lower the price? Instead of freezing my rent for 2 months or 3 months, I would be saving money on the long term.
But again, you see, I 100% agree with you. Yes, you're right. Uh, a lot of people just were not proactive enough,
Mm,
right? That was a big problem. That a lot of people just because the information dispensary and the wave of information that came out was literally a tidal wave. So the tsunami
yes.
of bad information that was given to you is like, oh
The
my God, you're
same
gonna die.
happened with the Soviet
It's
Union. The example that I gave earlier is that you can't trust something coming out of a communist government, even though their
You can't
market is
trust. You
not.
can't. No. You can't trust anything that's coming out of the government. And at the end of the day, I mean, if you look at it, one very beautiful thing that you said, and I completely agree with you, is the fact that if you dissect economies, you would see that countries with larger, with
Freedom.
wealthier people have a much healthier population. So
Mm-hmm.
it's Pakistan. The entire number of wealthy people is just a couple of families, right? It's just a
Yeah.
few families. So and that's out of 220 million people. So the underlying stack of the economy, the bottom of the pyramid
Yeah.
is so wide that by the time you get to the top, it's a very long journey, you know. So it's ridiculous how and again, I agree with you with the fact that, you know, probably we should have been at a point where we had to negotiate, uh, and some people did negotiate. Unfortunately, the majority of people did not, and they just left it.
And
Okay, let the
they
bank do
were
whatever they want, and let
dependent
the
on the
government.
daddy state concept. You know, and
Yes.
this is again which comes back. The state is making people dependent on it, whether voluntarily or not. People are becoming more dependent on the state. They're asking for more things from the state. They're asking for equality. What equality are people asking for? Should we all have the same phone? You're asking for free healthcare. Should we all have the same number of aspirin pills in our kitchen? Um,
What more, what more equality do you want? We are all born with two eyes, a nose, two ears, arms, legs. We're all born with a brain, and it is the most advanced computer in the universe to be able to retain knowledge, to be able to translate that knowledge, and to be able to convert that knowledge into action. And we still want to sit back and, oh my God, I'm poor. Who's going to buy me my dinner tonight? You need to
exactly.
go out and be proactive and find what your talent is,
Yes.
because we all have that one particular talent that we're extremely good at and better than
Mm.
everybody else, right? So we all need to go out and find that one particular talent that
Yes.
we have in us and convert that talent into the comfort that we need to look for. Equality, we're all equal. We all have equal opportunity. We all have equal chances. Unfortunately, maybe I did not have that, you know, it's like I had good education because, you know, my family subjected me to a
Yeah.
particular environment versus other people whose family did not. But after your adulthood, once you're a grown ass man, if you're still sitting at home, or if you're a grown ass woman, and if you're still
Mm.
sitting at home and waiting for the perfect husband or the perfect, you know, some
Opportunity.
military dictator or somebody to just come to your
Yeah.
house and take you out of whatever you put yourself into, then I'm sorry, man. That's like that's not the socialism, and that's not the way forward, and that is not the equality, and that is not distributed wealth. Because in distributed wealth, if you want to redistribute wealth right now, there's a lot of lazy motherfuckers out there that did not do any of the work.
You know
They
what
did
the
not do
problem, my
any.
biggest problem with distributing wealth is that in order to distribute it, you need to create it. And the state never creates wealth. So they're not
Yeah,
distributing wealth.
exactly.
So
No, nobody has. I mean, it's private owned money. It's all
exactly.
private owned money. So
Exactly.
my
I was having
money.
this discussion with someone today, and he's like, it's my right to have a free education. It's my right to have free healthcare. The thing is, what you want to define as your right or not may differ from one person to another. But one thing I know is
Yes,
that when someone else pays for my right becomes a privilege.
yes,
It doesn't
yes,
become a right.
exactly.
If
That's
my
the
right is coming from your pocket, then this is a privilege.
Yeah, because you're taking. I mean, if you know, again, I'm gonna go back to the example where 2% of the population is paying taxes, and 89% and 98% are getting or demanding free education and free
Yeah,
medical. But that's literally stealing from that person,
of
or that's
course.
stealing from everybody. The government has no money. It never has any money. The
No,
government gets money in not even a bank account, in the air, in a cloud somewhere, and that is all the money they collect from taxes. They collect from, you know, foreign
user
trade and so
fees,
on,
all
user fees, subscriptions, so on, whatever, you know. So it's all of this that goes into a particular place, and then credit is used for for probably building bridges, or you know, building a port, or
exactly.
buying
And
aircraft.
the more that the government deregulates, the less spending that the government is going to have. And the more that it can invest on those very basic things, such as bridges. So you deregulate, you reduce your government size, and you open the doors to private businesses. You open the doors to sharing your resources with other countries. One thing about socialism is that when it comes to equality, we're all hand in hand when it comes to all of this. But when it comes to trade, we're all the enemy,
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
So
how is that? How is that? How does that make sense? How am I? How am I equal to Elon Musk? How am I equal to Jeff Bezos?
Yeah.
Why should Jeff Bezos,
Pay
you
for
know,
my
uh,
university.
pay for my, not even my, why should he pay for my kids' university?
Yeah.
You know, why should he do any? I mean, if I did not work as hard, if I had worked as hard, and if I had that great idea back when he had it, and I've been, you know, and I actually leveraged it and I used it, and
Hmm.
now I am to where he is. Why should, you know, it just doesn't make sense. It just
No,
absolutely
no,
makes no sense
it
that
doesn't.
somebody that's sitting in a village somewhere watching television and being jealous is, you know,
Not
being
even being
vindictive
jealous,
and green.
blaming Jeff Bezos for their poverty.
Yeah,
Wealth is
no, it's no,
created.
it
This
doesn't
is
make
this
sense.
is the thing. Wealth is created. If I make $100 today, that doesn't mean I took $100 from you.
No, absolutely not. That means you went out and you busted your ass while I sat at home jerking off. That's what it
Exactly.
means. That's how it will goes. There is no way that, oh no, I went out and I made money. Oh, but that poor guy didn't make any money. Oh, I need to give him half my paycheck. Uh, no.
No, it doesn't work like that. Everyone knows what's going on inside their house. The government can't impose, but what they can because they do, but the government can't do an analysis of what's going on inside each house and how to distribute that wealth equally, right? And even
No,
if
there
they
is.
did, they can't because again, the government can't create wealth. In order to distribute wealth, you need to create it. This is what big businesses
Well,
are for. This is why we have.
over here what I'm gonna comment on this, and I'm gonna say government does not create wealth, but governments can create the infrastructure and the policy for wealth to be created.
Yes,
For example, if we want to circle back to the example of Singapore, if you want to circle back to the example of
New
what other
Zealand.
countries are, New Zealand. Yeah, you know, so if they once they provide that infrastructure for the business owner or the foreign investor or the whoever, these people will feel comfortable and they'll come in and they will create jobs, and those jobs will, you know, create households and so on. So
Exactly,
we
but
don't want to create
this is because we they understand the concept of a free market. You have a government that claims to be a social democrat in New Zealand, which is practically a new government. But at the same time, whether they want to call themselves social democrats or not, in reality, what they really are capitalists with compassion, right? Because they understand
Yeah,
the concept
listen,
of
I
a free
mean,
market. They don't regulate it. So you have
let
these
me let,
countries that are doing really good, and then you have countries, for example, who rank very low on the market freedom index. And I never see people running for election saying, I want to take up my country from number 80 on the market freedom index to number 3 or to number 4. No one discusses this issue because all politicians do is give people the illusion that they're going to give them money, that they're going to give them jobs, that they're going to create all of these things out of thin air because money grows on trees. So they keep printing money, or they keep making false promises, or they make decisions that divide people, like Donald Trump, who blames Mexicans for the economy. So you're closing your economy. What he wants to do is nationalize things in a capital world. So he wants to have all these businesses in the States. He's trying to nationalize. But how much would an iPad cost if it was produced in the United States?
a lot of money, much more money, because it already costs a lot of money.
Exactly. I think I saw it one time, and you can hold me back on this. I think that it costs about 12. If they want to sell it and make a profit, it would cost about $12,000.
Yeah,
And this goes back
because
again to minimum wage as well, because what in minimum wage, when people socialists love to give out Nordic countries as an example of socialism, when in reality they have nothing to do with socialism, because Nordic countries, they have unions, and these unions they make discussions and negotiations within each other. The government rarely interferes, and in Nordic countries they don't have a minimum wage. So the company pays you for what you're worth, not for the government's perception of what you're worth.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing, you know. It's like, and uh, what what you said about the welfare state or the socialist state is just a couple of months ago, I did this course with the University of Virginia, and it's a design thinking course,
Mm,
and part of it is empathizing with your customer, and actually understanding the pains and translating those pains into
yes,
gains. Uh, so, at the end of that exercise, what happens is you start seeing problems as profitable opportunities.
exactly. But
Now,
isn't
now
this
is that now? Huh?
the
Sorry,
entire reason of a business is to solve a problem?
and turn a profit.
No,
So you do two things with a business. One, you solve a problem, and obviously you turn a profit because, well, you've done so much work, or you have offices and resources and people and electricity and so on, and computers and everything. So you have to pay for that.
exactly.
So you have to have profit. So you can't really go out and say, I'm
Yes,
going to eradicate polio. Bill Gates eradicated polio in India, but only after he became a billionaire, right?
exactly.
So only after Windows sold billions and billions of copies, and
Yeah,
Bill Gates had a little bit of money to spare, and he went to India and he eradicated the polio there. And to come
exactly.
back to it, and to also to kind of Bill Gates, and how awesome he is and everything. Bill Gates goes and he makes children healthy in India, so that children in India, because Indians are very good with technology and so on.
Yeah,
So he makes children healthy in India. These children grow up singing praise of Bill Gates, because Bill Gates is the hero and he's the one who saved their life.
yeah,
So they move forward, and once they reach a particular age, they are cheap labor.
yes.
So I mean, it's a vicious cycle, Wasim, and we could literally
It
sit
is.
here and probably talk about it till tomorrow. We
Yeah.
won't we won't get done with this.
You know what's so funny is that companies, large companies that have their factories in China or in Mexico or on countries where they have a much poorer economy than the rest of the world, in a certain sense, they're generating wealth because take out that factory worker from China and put him somewhere where he has to work in agriculture. He won't be making the same money. He'll be making even a more miserable money. So that's the thing. Yes, inequality exists. Yes, poverty exists. But do you want to die out of hunger? Or do you actually want to work somewhere where you're making enough money to be able to support yourself? And we have to be more conscious culturally as well, because if I'm a poor person who sees no bright future, then it is my responsibility not to have kids and bring them into this miserable life that I'm living. Not because of I don't want to have kids, or not because I'm for and anything you want, but for the most simple reason is that because, like I said, if I am not uh, doing fixing my house, I can't fix another house. I can't fix what's inside,
Absolutely.
what's outside before fixing what's inside. Then I need to fix my own house. I need to put my life on track, and then I can think about having kids. This is
These
my
days,
personal view.
I completely agree with you. And these days, actually, because we are actively talking to different venture capitalists from around the world, because we're going through a fundraising campaign right now for our startup. So it's something that I keep in mind, and I keep very clear on that the initial stage of the startup is to create financial impact. For me to be
Mm-hmm.
able to go out, make traction, and sell enough to be able to achieve particular growth and achieve a particular target. And then once I'm done with that, and my employees are taken care of, my board of directors are taken care of, my crew is taken care of, my customers taken care of, that's when I'll go and I'll look for the social impact, and I'll probably try and help a village
Exactly,
deal
as an
with drought
individual,
or
because
something.
a society doesn't eat, a society doesn't work, a society doesn't do anything. A society is just an accumulation of individuals. So the individuals in a
Absolutely.
society need to be doing good for the society to do good. You can't think of it as a collective thing. And what's funny is that so many states could have rescued big businesses just by giving them tax cuts, but they decided to inject fake money and create a fake economy. And at
Yep.
the end of the day, why don't you just cut these taxes and let these companies pay the salaries, let these companies do their job, let these companies invest where they think needs to be invested, take responsibility for their investments as well, not just saying, yeah, okay, I'm going to take this money and go home. I'm going to take these tax cuts and go home. No, because this is where the governments come in to protect your right, your freedom, your private property. So if someone is stealing from you, if the company is stealing from you, it's basically stepping into your private property.
Again, I don't think many companies went a negative route. There is a few, I know that, but a lot of
Hertz
companies.
filed for Chapter 11.
Hertz was a very, very strange case, and I was shocked when I saw the Hertz Chapter
LATAM,
11.
the airline, filed for Chapter 11 in the United States.
Yeah, okay, airline maybe, but
Yeah.
Hertz filing Chapter 11 was definitely a sneaky move. It was very strange. But again, transportation did suffer. Transportation suffered. It got a hit. It took a hit. So we don't know, did they? But again, what people don't realize, or what we as outsiders don't usually realize, is that there's a big difference between revenue and profit, right?
Yes.
So a company like Uber, a company like Kareem, a company like Hertz also, maybe, I'm not sure, they have to spend a big chunk of their money to keep their drivers happy, to keep their customers happy,
Maintenance.
to keep their marketing going on, to keep all of that. So in order for them to achieve their customer excellence, they cannot have a revenue positive. They will, I mean, Uber, for a fact, I know for the next 5 years, Uber will go into revenue negative. Same is the case
Yes.
with Kareem. Yeah, same as the case with Kareem. Maybe Hertz has a similar model. I don't know. But so there are certain companies that did get hit. Certain companies that realize the value of having their employees working from home and cutting on expenses such as rent and electricity and transportation and so on. And so for example, if a company is paying an employee transportation allowance to go to work and home every day, and now he doesn't have to go to work every day. So the company went back and asked these people, it's like, listen, would it be okay for you if we cut down your expense right now? Once we're back on track and you have to come back to the office, we'll give you this money again.
This
And
is
these
what
are
I
the
was
agreements.
saying about individuals negotiating, is that
No, but these are,
many people didn't have this
actual.
option.
La, 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 sorry. I will. This is actually an argument I had a couple of days online
Mm.
as well. A lot of large organizations, Facebook being one of them, Google being another, they actually approached their employees and they explained this
Yeah.
scenario to them, and they told them that your actual money that you will receive at the end of the month will not go below your contract.
Yeah.
What you will not receive is the additional perks that you were getting.
Transportation, all of that, which,
Travel allowance,
yeah.
vacation money, this and that, whatever. So this is the package that went down. But people, because they're sitting at home and they're getting their news from their uncle's daughter, right? So they don't really know what's going on. So they panic.
Yeah. That is true.
Read
A,
the
a lot of
news.
people panicked. A lot of people didn't have, as well, a lot of people didn't have the chance to negotiate their contract, which is a shame. Uh,
Yes,
the-
yes, there are a lot of people like that. A
when
lot
when
of
when the government
families.
imposes on banks to freeze their loans or their credits, and what they're essentially doing is firing people, because no policy in the world can save lives. What they can do in this time is just like interchange lives, because according to UNICEF, for example, 1,200,000 children are going to die as a result of quarantine. Because who's going to provide the basic necessities that NGOs are providing for countries in Africa, in Sierra Leone, and countries like that? Who is responsible for these people now? Because
Again,
the government can't do any of that. We have a really great example in our region, which is Lebanon. A lot of people are saying, look what neoliberalism did to Lebanon. No, look what the IMF did to Lebanon. Look what your government did to Lebanon by taking out so many loans. Don't blame neoliberalism on this, because this is neo-mercantilism that what happened in Lebanon. You can't blame
Lebanon,
capitalism.
Lebanon is a great example because the people showed such, I think the most united people on the planet are the Lebanese people. They're absolutely brilliant. They're beautiful.
Yes.
So Lebanon is a very, it's a strange case. And neoliberalism in Lebanon could have could have been a great example to the entire world if it wasn't for the corruption of the government. I agree with you. In Pakistan, the government tried to take the initiative of actually, this life-saving policy where they wanted to create a specialized force or a specialized group of people that will go out to these slums and go out to the poor and actually hand them cash or
Yeah.
hand them, rations and so on. But over there, the objection was, one, you're putting more lives at risk, and two, this new force would not know what the NGO or a particular,
Exactly.
any other organization that already has this data. So, so there are so many layers and so many things that the 1.2 million people, the children dying of quarantine, that's really sad. I understand. But, uh, well, there's, I think a child dies in Africa every 3 seconds due to,
Yes.
due to starvation.
And what we're doing was
So
we're accelerating this rate.
why have we forgotten those numbers?
Mm.
If we've always known that a child is dying in Africa every 3 seconds,
No.
why aren't more people working towards that? If
Again,
we
because we
know
were
for a fact,
dependent on our state to provide them with
yes,
this help because of our taxes. I had this conversation with my friend and I was like, what are you going to do? Because your government is broke now. Your government is not going to be able to pay for these people. So what are you going to do? He said, I'm going to ask them to raise taxes so we can help those people.
but who
Like,
pays the tax?
exactly.
It's
So,
it's a vicious circle. It's a vicious cycle. It's very subjective. It's very localized, unfortunately, because all people are different, communities are different. It will take a very long time, Wasim. It will take a very long time for us to reach an ideal situation or ideal society.
mm,
A lot of people would have to be sacrificed. A lot of the older generation that have created this corruption and pollution and this system
yes.
will have to be no more for this ideology to be forgotten. Uh, a
You
lot of
know, I've seen many people online share videos and images of Cuban doctors arriving in Italy, Cuban doctors arriving in South Africa, Cuban doctors arriving in I don't know what, I don't know where. Italy released a statement saying that those Cuban doctors have been a burden on their society because they come unprepared, they lack education, they lack sufficient training, so they invest more resources on training these doctors and they lose more time training these doctors that come from communist and socialist countries such as Cuba, for example.
I
And you
will
have people
I
going online and just reading the headline and of course this is where you're gonna have, this is where the internet and the free knowledge plays against you, right? Because you're sharing all this information, which again, on the iceberg, it looks like nice and snow and everyone's happy and everyone's equal and these doctors travel for free and I don't know what, and they're saving lives. They're destroying lives. You have this very weird myth that Cuba
I'll give
has a
you.
vaccine for lung cancer.
Oh no, wait. As far as that is concerned, I'll tell you a fun fact. At the time of Castro, uh, and this is you could go and look at it, and
Yeah.
in picture and in document. At the time of Castro and at the time of a lot of communist regimes, there was a lot of uh, human testing being done to
Mm,
find the perfect super soldier, Captain America.
yeah.
So the Cubans are known. The Cubans and the Russians have been banned for multiple sporting
Yes.
events because of use of performance enhancing drugs and so on. If you look at these Cuban wrestlers and the Cuban boxers, they look superhuman. They have
Mm,
completely different genetics from you know from
yeah.
regular human beings. But if you look at Cuba as a country, it's a poor country.
It's
So
a
a
country
poor
frozen in
country,
time, and many people blame the
yeah, yeah.
blockage for it, but it's not. It's the government that doesn't allow foreign investment. It's the government that nationalizes everything, and then you have
No,
people.
but even over here, if there is a blockade, if there is an embargo on Cuba, that means there should be malnourishment. That means it should be, there should be people who
Yeah,
are not so healthy. But how are they coming out looking like monsters?
yeah,
Those guys look like the Terminator,
and
man.
good dancers as
Ever look at their
well.
boxers? They're crazy. So it's all of this. It's like we're looking at, yeah, I saw that piece of news, and the day I saw that news, I was like, man, please don't take the plasma that is coming out of Cuba. You don't know
Yeah.
what it is.
You have even within our society, you lived in Jordan, you lived in the Middle East, you live in Asia, and you see the glorification of people like Che Guevara, for example.
He was
And
a mass murderer.
yes, 70,000 people died under his hands. And then you have
The
people
guy,
justifying that. And this is my problem with the left, is that for some people on the left, some dictatorships are okay while others are
yeah.
not okay. While me, for example, I think none dictatorship should exist. I am all for freedom, and dictatorship is the opposite of freedom. So you have these people praising Che Guevara and saying, even Che Guevara, when he wrote a letter to his dad and he confessed, he said, Dad, I like killing people.
Che Guevara deserted his entire country, his army, his post, his everything. The guy was Argentinian. He had nothing to do
Yeah.
with Cuba. He went, he murdered
He
so many
rode
people, and then
South Africa. He came from a very privileged family as well. So and he decided to go on a South American road trip, basically.
yeah,
Mass
and then
murdering
coming
people.
back, back to a point you just made. Like certain particular, as Arabs, as people who lived in the Middle East, we look at Saddam Hussein as the hero,
Yeah.
right? Whereas the West and whereas other people look at him as a dictator. He was suppressive. He was this. He was that. Versus people that actually lived under him, or people that were close to the Iraqi population or to the Iraqi state. They kind of knew what. Okay, there was dictatorship. There was all of that. But at the same time, there was some kind of a sense of security in the way that
But this is
if you
this
if
is this is this is counterproductive in my opinion, because a lot of people gave up their freedom for that sense of security, which goes back to the point that we're facing now. A lot of people are doing the same thing just under different circumstances, right? Where you're giving up a big portion
absolutely.
of your freedom for your security, but really on the long term, where does it matter more? How much of your freedom are you willing to give up for a small sense of security? Me personally,
You know,
none, because I want to be a productive member of society. I want to be successful. I have visions, I have dreams. This is things that socialism never discusses, that when you have ambitions, when you have dreams, how are you going to stop thinking about yourself and about your ambitions and just start thinking about society? You can't have the more talented work with the less talented, the more productive with the least productive. Um, it's it's really
you
just one big
can
mess.
you can balance that out. You can balance out a strong wheel, and in a car they do it all the time. So a strong wheel probably goes in the front, and the back,
Yeah,
and the,
but
and the weaker wheel goes in the
it's
back.
not as strong as when you have
Of
four
course
strong
not.
wheels.
Absolutely. The performance vehicle, the car that goes on the F1 track, all four wheels have to be synced, and
Exactly.
the engine has to
Where
be perfect.
I tell people who preach this, I say, where do you want to teach your children? In Cuba or in Sweden? And the thing is, they come back with the argument that Sweden is a social democrat country. No, it is not a social democrat country. Sweden has a free market. Actually, it ranks really high up on the free market. Most Nordic countries do. Sweden, when they started actually I think it was in the 1960s, when they started redistributing their wealth and they entered into the horrible crisis that they did in the 1990s. How did they come out of it? In 1994, they started deregulating many things, trains, national airlines, everything was deregulated in Sweden. This is how they were able to fix their economy. They do have some social aspects such as free healthcare. One aspect of 100 more liberal things, that is also not performing as good as it should have. You know, Sweden reached its peak in the 1960s when it was really, really free. Um,
The thing that I'm shocked by, and it surprises me, is the fact that it's like if somebody has gone through door number one and saw the problems that are there, and they went, and somebody else went through door number two and saw the monsters that lived in there,
mm,
and then they went through door number three and they saw that, okay, so door number three is kind of a better option than one and two. Then
yeah.
why do we have to try to go through door number one and number
Because
two to get to door number three?
people don't blame the system. They blame the people, right? When you have an economic system that has proven itself a failure, when it's Yugoslavia, Cuba, Venezuela, North Korea, Iran, all these countries, this system has proven itself to be a failure. And yet you say, Venezuela is not socialism, it's corruption. Of course, absolute power is always corruption. North Korea isn't socialism. Why isn't it socialism? Doesn't it preach those 10 points that Karl Marx was talking about? Doesn't it preach free education, decentralization, confiscating properties from immigrants? Don't all these countries imply these 10 points that Karl Marx talked about? Why is it
what
corruption? Where is
what
this
was
new
his name?
man that Karl Marx waited for, the man that was going to renounce himself and live for his society and forget his individual rights? He never showed
Yeah,
up. He
like
created monsters.
yeah, remember Manson, Charles Manson? He
Yeah,
did the same.
yeah.
Deepak Chopra, and so on. But it's like I was gonna make a point and I forgot what it was. Uh, but it's dang it, I forgot. Anyways, uh, so yeah, man, it's just it's a ridiculous thing, and you can't. There is no such thing as socialism and everybody being
And
equal.
freedom.
People are not born that way. We are born equal, but we don't continue being that way because of the
Mhm.
choices and freedom. Come on, what freedom? Freedom of speech doesn't mean you can say everything you want to.
No,
So if we understand that, then we need to stop.
of
Then we need
course
to
not.
stop, going with
You
it.
know,
It's it's
like
it's just the
there's
freedom of being as twisted as I want to be.
yeah.
As whatever I want to do.
Look,
That's as much.
there
I
are
can't go
people
out and be
calling.
completely free.
Yeah, you know how Facebook, Twitter, a lot of social media companies are starting now to put out warnings on media that could be fake, on media that could be exaggerated or not accurate. And there are people saying, what about freedom of speech? Giving out false information is not freedom of speech. Giving out false information is giving out false information. You shouldn't give out false information.
Abusing people, cursing people out, talking
Yes.
shit about people. That's not freedom of speech. Criticism has nothing to do with bad vocabulary, right? So
Mm.
I'm surprised, I'm shocked. Honestly, when in 2008, I think it was the first experience I had as a human being when Donald Trump took when he won the election,
Yeah.
and then all of these people started attacking, and they started, they're
Mm.
talking, they're actually abusive,
This is the
and I was thinking to myself,
conservative. This is the
man,
conservative right that has only given us medicure mercantilism that has
listen. As far as I'm
for
concerned,
policies such
as
as
far as
socialism.
but as far as I'm concerned, let me tell you something. Me, I don't care who's the president of the United States, right?
Yeah.
I don't live in the United States, right? The people over there, they voted, they went out and they chose.
Mm.
Who am I to sit here and start talking about? And then even for Americans that were talking, that still do, he is your president. He is the chief of your country. Show a little bit of respect. Show a little bit of restraint. Freedom of speech does not mean that going out and calling Donald Trump names. And then if somebody
I
blocks
think
you,
I,
you feel
I, I
bad
think
about it.
I think
It- it-
the thing is Donald Trump is a very particular case, isn't he? Because he's one of the most Uh, I do agree with you
But
that
that, but that actually,
there are
but
more
Wasim,
productive
that started a
ways.
trend.
Yeah,
But that started a trend.
yes, no, no, I agree, and I do think there are more productive ways to raise awareness on the policies that Donald Trump is implementing that is destroying the economy of the United States. You know, there are
Absolutely.
ways to do this, calling people names usually and getting into fights. I get into a lot of Facebook arguments, but I always try to provide my arguments with facts, with data, with an argument, with a counter argument. I don't tell people who, for example, support socialism, you're a Nazi. No, I do compare socialism to labor camps and Holocaust camps that were in during the Nazis. No, because it's true. Because those people were equal, right? Those people were equal in everything. Money didn't exist. They had the same access to food. They were all working, the talented with the least talented. They were all working in these
They
camps.
were prisoners. They
Yeah,
were really, really
this is
treated
this is
badly.
socialism.
Yeah, but see, that's not, again, if what some if they've gone through door number one and they saw the monster in there, we don't have to go
Exactly.
through the same door, right? So
Yeah.
that's where, again, as you said, yes, we you provide a counter argument, and you have to, because we live in an age where we have this beautiful tool, and it's called Google. So
Yeah.
how could we not go back and Google stuff? How could we not go
Yeah.
back and search for
I
the
hope
correct
people come
information?
out of this better free thinkers and people who appreciate industries such as agriculture, such as medicine, such as engineering, such as infrastructure, and people actually start aiming to to have better education, to have better jobs in these fields instead of giving out money to football clubs or to Instagram models or to influencers. I really do hope people start seeing how much our society can benefit off of industries and how much money they can make as well off of industries such as agriculture and medicine and engineering, infrastructure, all of these.
I hope on the other side of this we do find all of that what you're saying, yes, because there is so much opportunity and so much money being lost, especially in agriculture around the world. I hope on the other side of this, on terms of governments and policies, they probably come out with better budgets for education, with better budgets for medicine, rather
Yes,
than bigger budgets for war and armies and military. Uh,
exactly.
I hope we spend more time caring for each other rather than trying to fight each
Yes,
other.
we have come to a culture. We're going to enter into a culture. I hope that we're going to enter into a culture where we understand the importance of saving money. Because what matters right now, what you see right now, are the people who really embrace the culture of saving, who come out. Because I can have a credit card, right? The other day I was thinking, if I want to buy a car, there are so many procedures that I have to do to buy a car with my own money, getting the permission and doing all of that. While I can have 5 credit cards, spend as much as I want, without anyone getting on my back, and it's not even my money. So I have more restrictions on my money than I do on other people's money.
It's not your money, but it is your debt. Don't forget
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah,
At the
exactly.
end, you have to pay the debt. So
Yeah,
it's not your money, but it becomes your responsibility. Now
yeah,
that's the trick. That is the game. That is the devil. That is what they're doing. Nobody has the money, but people are constantly buying things. So debt is increasing and
yes,
wealth is decreasing. And we're getting, so what I would like people to do is not be able to save money, but to understand the value of money, and
exactly.
make
And
and make
understand
more
that money
clever.
within itself doesn't have value. I'll agree. They can go back to the $1 million example when you wake up with $1 million, but then everyone wakes up with $1 million, then
Yeah, and I mean,
you go,
if everybody wakes up with $1 million, and a bottle of water is $10 million, what
yeah,
do? Your $1 million are worthless. So it's just about having the value, knowing exactly what you want to do, knowing the value of the things you need, and just getting
exactly.
those, rather rather than just going around and, it's like, it's humans will always
Yeah.
need, they will always want, they will always be greedy. It's how we're coded. It's how we
Mm-hmm.
are.
We
You
are
offer
people who
any.
have ambitions. It's not even greed. I think we give selfish, the word selfish, such a bad name, because what
Yeah.
selfish means really is like loving yourself and choosing yourself before choosing someone or anything else. So in essence, you're saying, I'm going to do this for me, which is going to make me better, which is going to make me more productive, and then I can help those under me, which is
Yeah.
the right thing. But that doesn't mean that there aren't better people above me just because I'm selfish. There's always going to be someone better than I am, you know. And it's sad to think about it, that how much talent we are losing because of people who live in dictatorships such as the Castro dictatorship or such as North Korea, because those people will
But
never have the opportunity to to shine bright or to give us an invention. Who's working on a vaccine right now? Private companies. I haven't seen a government say, I'm going to make a vaccine for my people. I haven't seen any
no, but
government.
governments, no, 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 but wait a second. But governments don't. It's not the government's job to
Thank
create
you.
a vaccine.
Thank you. Then why isn't
It's
the government's job to provide me with public health care? Did you understand what I'm saying? Is that you can provide public health care if you want as a government, but that doesn't mean that you compete with the private sector. Because one thing is giving your people access to public health care, and then another thing is saying you're a private hospital, you can do coronavirus tests. You're a hospital, you have to charge people this amount of money, so you can't make profit. Then no, I'm going to close. What did I open for in the first place?
it's again, it's subjective. It's very subjective. It was the need of the hour, unfortunately. uh, and some level, what you said earlier when we started, we've never had anything like the corona. In
No,
modern times, we really
no,
did not have anything like the corona.
no.
And even right now, nobody understands it really. So every day you're waking up, it's new information, it's new, it's everything is new, it's new policies. So we're really unable to understand it. The only thing that I would like to see people do for moving forward is take a little better care of their health.
Yes.
So if you you know it's instead of taking a paracetamol when you get a flu, if you keep your vitamin C levels at a good,
Throughout the
healthy
entire
level
year.
throughout the entire year, you won't get the flu. So even with this, if people work out, if they take their
Yeah.
multivitamins, if they eat healthy, if they eat clean, they keep themselves clean. So like literally getting rid of the corona is just, it's one thing. Just keep healthy. The
Mm-hmm.
people that are dying from corona are people that had respiratory problems, people that had
Yes.
weight problems, people
Yes.
that
There are
had
many
weak immune
factors. There are
systems,
many factors that play into this, such as pollution in your country, genetic diseases, all of these things. Uh,
unhealthy lifestyles,
yes.
unhealthy lifestyles. So if you keep a healthy
You
lifestyle,
exactly.
you
We
can
as people need to come out with ways to lower the pollution. We need to think of more ways to use clean energy. You know what the coronavirus did, Greta Thunberg couldn't do in 100 years, right? It
Wasim, I'm running out of battery
yeah.
on my
Anyways,
phone.
it was really nice talking to you. Uh, we should do
It-
this again soon as well. I think we talked about so many things, and we have so much more to talk about. And
yes, we do. This was lots of fun. I like it.
definitely,
We should definitely do this more often. There is much more. There's so many subjects. There's so many things that I think we could bounce off each other. Even
yes,
considering that you're sitting in Chile, I'm sitting in Pakistan. For the entrepreneurs out there, for the startup ecosystem out there, there's so much data that we could share for people to understand what's going on and
exactly.
how to develop technology and how innovation should work and how to use innovation to move forward and
Yeah,
solve all these problems, man. We have it. We have all the resources. We just need
yes.
to apply them properly.
Exactly. Nabil, thank you so much for joining. I'll post this, and hopefully many people will interact with us, whether they have another opinion or not. It's always nice to hear what other people have to say. And
Absolutely.
we'll stay in touch. And good luck with your business as well. And keep us updated on how it works out. it's really refreshing to see people and entrepreneurs working in the agriculture and the green energy sector.
It is the way forward, man. Two things. One, everybody needs to eat, and we're never going to run out of sun.
Yes.
So, we're using these two things to our advantage, and hopefully the day will come when we actually create the social impact that we aim to create. And yeah, man, we're
Yeah.
called Radical Growth Solutions, and we fucking love it.
Perfect. All right, bro. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Take care of yourself.
You
Thank you.
too.
Bye bye.
Bye. Bye.